you ask me, the best platform to play RPGs on right now is the Nintendo Switch, because now you don't have to just stop playing the game when you go to work. You can bring your console with you, play on your break, and keep the game going. And that is why today I want to talk to you about my 10 favorite RPGs on the console. What's going on, everybody? I'm Jay. Welcome to Square Pegs. We are talking about 10 fantastic RPGs. Now, these are not all JRPGs. There's going to be some Western-developed ones in here as well. We're kicking things off with one of those Western-developed games, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt.
All right, first and foremost, I want to apologize for my voice in this video. I'm fighting a sinus infection. I've got a little bit of congestion, so I sound a little bit off. At least I do in my head. So if I sound normal to you, just disregard this message entirely and enjoy the video. So, while I do absolutely understand that I am in the minority here, it is true. The Witcher 3 just didn't appeal to me until I got it on the Switch. For some reason, I needed the opportunity to be able to take the game with me to continue the story and not get interrupted to really make it click for me. Now, since then, I've gone back and played it on my PS4, I played it on my Xbox Series X, but the Switch one is the one I come back to the most often because of that portability and that ability to take it with me. Now, let's talk about some of the great parts about this game. First off, you're playing as one of the best protagonists in the history of video games in Geralt of Riva. You have 100 hours of base gameplay in just the initial release of the game, plus over 50 hours when you consider the fact that you also get the Hearts of Stone and the Blood and Wine expansions included in this complete edition. It's fantastic. Like, I am just head over heels for this game. I just think it's amazing. And while, yeah, it is the worst looking of the versions of the game that have been released, I can't complain about the gameplay because I do think it's just an absolute blast. Wonderful Western-developed RPG, a wonderful kind of spin on what a great action RPG can be. This, to me, is one of the premier games on the Nintendo Switch.
One of my absolute favorites, one of the best games released of the previous generation, and so stoked that it has a fantastic port on the Nintendo Switch. Amazing, amazing quality game on the Switch. It's absolutely worth playing if you have not had the opportunity to do so. Next, I don't have a physical for this one. We're going to stick with a digital release, and this is legitimately one of my favorite games of 2023. This is Sea of Stars.
When I saw that we were getting a sequel to The Messenger, but it was going to be an RPG and a turn-based RPG with some kind of interesting gameplay mechanics in it, I was very intrigued because I thought The Messenger was one of the best games I'd ever played. And the more I saw the eventual sequel that came to be known as Sea of Stars, I was absolutely blown away with it. This is legitimately one of my favorite games of the year. I've put a ton of hours into it. I think it actually is my most played game on the Switch this year. And it's all because of how incredible the gameplay is. And I don't typically like to suggest non-physical games in situations like this, but I feel compelled to do so because this is one of the best RPGs legitimately ever made, let alone on the Switch. It's just one of the best ever made. Now, there is going to be a physical release for it. I just don't have it yet. There actually may be one already available. I just haven't placed my order yet. But if you're looking for a game that's a little bit different than what you might be used to with typical RPGs, and you're looking for something with a sense of humor and some interesting mini games built in where you're not just kind of grinding turn-based battles as you go, Sea of Stars is something that's really going to speak to you. I know it really spoke to me, and it's become one of my favorite games of all time in a very short amount of time. I think I want more people to play this one, and I know a lot of people have, and I'm probably sounding like a broken record at this point because I've suggested it a few times on the channel already, but more people need this game in their lives because I think it's an important game.
Now, I'm a sucker for anything that these guys develop. I love The Messenger. Sea of Stars, I think, is a revelatory game that more people need the chance to play. It is available on Game Pass. It's also on the PS5. It's pretty much everywhere. PS5, Switch, Xbox, PC. Just play it if you have the chance. If you love RPGs, you need to be playing Sea of Stars. This game is going to be standing in for the entire series because I don't think you can go wrong with any choice for the Xenoblade Chronicles. So we're going to start with just the first one. This is Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition.
As a stand-in for both the game that is being featured right now, Xenoblade Chronicles Deluxe Edition, as well as Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Torna, and Xenoblade Chronicles 3, I want to show off Xenoblade Chronicles here because this game is just incredible, and the Switch version is the best version that's ever been released. These are unbelievably deep games with amazing combat mechanics and just a phenomenal story that it doesn't miss. Each and every one of them is fantastic. I love them all. The first one is probably my favorite of the ones I've played the most so far. I haven't played much of 3 yet, and I know a lot of people really enjoy that one, but for me, 1 is just a triumph of a game. It's such a remarkable experience to be able to play this now on 3 different consoles. I've been able to play this on the Wii, on the 3DS, and now on the Switch, and each time it just captivates me. It's just brilliant.
So like I said, you can't go wrong with Xenoblade Chronicles, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Torna, or Xenoblade Chronicles 3. They're all magnificent titles. Just using this one as kind of an analog for all 3. All 3 proudly sit on my shelf. All 3 of them are fantastic. All right, here's one from Square Enix that I really dig and that I hadn't actually ever played before, but this getting a Western release and a full translation is really cool, and that is Live Alive.
I really do enjoy games that have multiple protagonists and multiple kind of viewpoints as you go through a game, and this one, to me, Live Alive, feels a little bit like Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger had a baby. And it also feels as kind of like the ancestor of games like Octopath Traveler, because you have a massive cast of characters where you're able to choose each of these different characters and play through them with different storylines for each. And as you go, they're drawn together. It's a really, really interesting kind of setup. I've played the prehistory level, and I'm currently working on the Wild West level so far, and I'm slow rolling it just because I play a lot of games at the same time. So yes, I have not beaten this one yet, so I am suggesting it before doing so, but from what I've seen so far, I think it's absolutely brilliant. You get to play throughout different periods of history. You get to play in prehistory, Imperial China, the twilight of Edo Japan, the Wild West, present day, the near future, the distant future, and the Middle Ages. And each character and each protagonist that you control and the different characters that you meet all have unique personalities. On the Switch version are all brilliantly voice acted. And it works. Like, this is something where I didn't actually ever expect to see this one released in the States. Now, we've had fan translations of Live Alive in the past, and they were brilliant, but this is the first time we've ever gotten the official release from Square Enix here in the States, and we're better off for it. It's a wonderful game.
I'm a sucker for multi-part stories. I love deep character work in a video game, and Live Alive has that in spades. Brilliant title. If you haven't had a chance to play it, you definitely should. All right, this is another one that's standing in for an entire series because legitimately everything I have played in the Trails series is unbelievable.
Well, this game is 100% a stand-in for every other game in the series, and there are a lot of them currently available on the Nintendo Switch with more to come. The Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel 3 is a game in particular that is very important to me. This is one I took a flyer on when I saw it on sale at Amazon. I didn't know what to expect from it. I had never played any of the Legend of Heroes or any of the Trails series. It was just something that looked interesting to me. I was curious, so I gave it a shot, and I was really pleasantly surprised with what happened. I got a very interesting school-based RPG. I say this a lot in my videos, but it's aggressively Japanese. Like, this is not something that would have been thought of by a Western developer by any stretch of the imagination. It's definitely a Japanese game, and it just works. The combat is incredibly creative. The effects in the game are very well done. The team-ups as you attack are magnificent. It's something that just feels like a natural progression of other RPGs that I have played throughout my life. If you want to play any of the Trails games, a lot of them are currently available on the Switch. You can get Trails of Cold Steel 3 and 4, Trails into Reverie, Trails to Azure, Trails from Zero, and Boundless Trails: The Legend of Nayuta. There's more to come, too, from what I understand. I think, like, NIS America and Falcom are bringing a ton of them stateside, which just makes me ecstatic. I'm still holding out hope that we're going to get Trails of Cold Steel 1 and 2 available on the Switch one day, but I'm also not holding my breath too hard on that, but fingers crossed one day it happens.
When I tried out Trails of Cold Steel 3 on a lark, I saw this on sale on Amazon for like $20. I took a chance on it because, hey, why not? It's JRPG, right? I was completely blown away by what the game offered. It is a deep, immersive story with memorable characters and fantastic gameplay. I also really like that it ships with an instruction manual, and it has a lenticular card inside of it. I like a physical release that leans into the fact that it's a physical release and actually has physical components to it. So the Trails games are all like that. They're all wonderful. Next up is the newest game on this list. This actually just released over the last couple of months from Nintendo. This is Super Mario RPG.
I could talk about Super Mario RPG for hours, and I would love to one day talk about Super Mario RPG for hours, but I'll keep this brief. This was one of the most unexpected games of the year for me. I had no idea that this was going to be coming. There were rumors that we were going to get one, but I thought that was kind of far-fetched and kind of ridiculous because, I mean, It's Super Mario RPG, it's Nintendo and Square working together again, re-releasing something that hasn't seen a real re-release outside of some virtual console shenanigans here and there. But to get it, and to get it completely remastered in the way that we did, while still being a loving tribute to the original by including things like the original soundtrack on the game, is kind of perfect, really. I think it plays absolutely fantastically well. I think it looks great. It's so true to the original release of the game that it just works. Because if you're familiar with the original, you're going to be familiar with this one. Now, I've seen some people complain that, oh, it's too easy. The first game wasn't really all that challenging. It's very true to the original to me. I think it's fantastic. It's decidedly a game from the mid-90s with a beautiful coat of 2023 paint on it.
Now, I know for a lot of folks, they're going to want to play the original on the Super Nintendo, and I can't fault you for that. I own the original as well, but it's one of my favorite games, and I wanted the opportunity to have it portably on physical media. Next up, another that kind of represents both games in the series so far that have released on the Switch, because this is kind of the advent of the HD 2D from Square Enix, and that is Octopath Traveler 2.
So this one's kind of standing in for both games in the series, because I think they're absolutely fantastic, but the Octopath games, to me, are the epitome of new Square Enix. When I think of Square, I think of things like Final Fantasy, like Dragon Quest, that are these kind of old, dyed-in-the-wool series that are very set in their ways and frequently don't try anything terribly new. They stick to their formulas. And more power to them, they should. They're classic franchises for a reason, but stuff like this, stuff like Project Triangle Strategy, these are things where Square Enix can get a little bit more creative and try something new. And because of Octopath, we got blessed with the gorgeous visuals of HD 2D. And I love the idea of the branching paths for each game. Now, the first one is a grindfest. I will completely admit to that, and that is a deep flaw that does make the game a little bit difficult to get into at times. But from what I have played of the second one so far, that problem has been addressed. It is still grindy. It's still a classic JRPG, but it doesn't seem to be to the level of ridiculousness that we had in the first one, where it felt like you were grinding for days on end just to be able to move forward. I love the look of this game. I love the voice acting. I love the soundtrack. I just think it's fantastic. Octopath and Octopath 2, if you were looking for a classic JRPG told in a brand new way, full of memorable characters with different skills and different abilities, you need to check them out. They're well worth doing so.
Now, this one, much like Live Alive, has multiple characters, multiple story arcs, multiple different viewpoints that you can play through. And to me, that makes a game really compelling because there's an opportunity for a lot of story options being told. And this one is amazing. I love both of the Octopath Traveler games. I think they're truly stunning to look at, truly stunning to behold. And I really enjoy the improvements they made in the second one to kind of get it away from that original grind fest of the first. I think this one's a little more balanced than the first one, but you can't go wrong with either of them. I think they're both worthwhile to own. This is the first RPG I owned on the Switch, and the first one that I really sunk a ton of hours into, and I just absolutely... I'm enthralled with the universe that this game has set up and everything that it represents since, and that is Dragon Quest XI-S.
Now, I'd played the original Dragon Warrior on the NES, and I'd played the Dragon Quest games that were on the 3DS, but I hadn't played Dragon Quest XI when it originally released, and I was a little bit apprehensive. I didn't actually think I was going to enjoy this one nearly as much as I did, but like 130 hours later, I can tell you that it's one of my favorite games ever made. I love the different characters in the game. I think one of the strongest things that Dragon Quest does is that it gives you the silent protagonist, but it's not an annoying silent protagonist like Cloud is. Probably going to get some hate mail now because I don't like Cloud, but I really like the hero from Dragon Quest XI. I think he's fantastic, but the thing that Square does brilliantly well is they surround him with memorable characters that have their own unique personalities that really bring the world to life. And each culture you go to is unique and different and does their own thing. It doesn't feel like a homogenized world. It feels like a large world full of a vast and varying set of people. I just think it's fantastic. I think it's a brilliant title, and the combat in the game is so much fun. The storyline is wonderful. I really can't find a flaw with Dragon Quest XI-S.
I've played the Dragon Quest series since it launched. I started with the first one because it got sent to me by Nintendo with my subscription to Nintendo Power, and I loved it. I thought it was incredible, but I look at now how rough that original game was and how far the series has come since then, and I'm blown away by the progression and just the deep affection that people have for the series. And I wasn't sold on Dragon Quest XI when it launched. I didn't think I was going to really enjoy it, but several hundred hours later and multiple playthroughs, I definitely do. Next up, this is a game that I own on the PS4, and I think everyone needs to own if you're an RPG fan. It is Persona 5 Royal.
I am not a huge fan of buying a game multiple times. Typically, if I buy it once, that's good enough. And if I do buy it again, I'm trading in a version that I already own just to get it out of my possession so I don't have multiple copies of it. I don't like a lot of video game clutter in that regard. Except for games that I find to be really, really special. So I had never played a Persona game before I played Persona 5 Royal. I had dabbled briefly in Persona 3, but I had never spent enough time with it to really kind of get into the series. It took Persona 5 Royal for me to really get excited about the game. And what had actually happened was I bought Persona 5, and then the next day they announced Persona 5 Royal, so I just immediately traded it in towards the collector's edition for P5R on the PS4. And I loved it. Legitimately, one of the best RPGs I'd ever played. And I remember when I played it, I said, God, I wish this came out for the Switch because I would love to be able to take this with me on the go to be able to play this wherever I go. And it took years, but here it is. It's a spectacular game full of memorable characters, a wonderful look that does not suffer too much on the Nintendo Switch. I really think this is a must-own for people that love RPGs because it's fantastic.
I mean, what can I say about P5 Royal that hasn't been said a million times by a million people more eloquent than me? It is one of the best RPGs ever made. Atlus absolutely knocked it out of the park. They have memorable characters, beautiful visuals, fantastic music, and incredible dialogue with brilliant gameplay. You cannot go wrong with it. Now, the last one I want to talk about is from one of my favorite RPG series. I hesitate to call it my favorite because Suikoden is my favorite one, but Tales of Vesperia is my favorite on the Switch right now. Once the HD remasters of Suikoden 1 and 2 release, that would change, but let's talk about Tales of Vesperia.
One of my favorite RPG series outside of Suikoden and outside, to be fair, outside of Final Fantasy as well, is the Tales series from Namco Bandai. I just think it's incredible. I've liked every single Tales game that I've ever played, but my favorite one is Tales of Vesperia. Now, this originally released back on the Xbox 360 and the PS3, but the deluxe edition or the definitive edition that released on the Nintendo Switch is something kind of remarkable, just because of how much content is in this game and how well it both performs and just seems like a natural fit for the console, like it was designed for it. The gameplay is amazing. Like, you already have a memorable story with great characters. It's kind of a landmark, a trademark of the Tales series. And the voice acting in the game is great as well. But the thing that I love about the Tales series that just really makes me enjoy it so much is something that is different than any other RPG series, and it's the Tales linear motion battle system. It's a little bit like a fighting game. It's an RPG fighting game, and it just works. It just works. I adore this series. I adore this game. Like I said, this is my favorite in the series, and I'm so happy that it got a re-release on the Switch because it works so brilliantly well. Tales of Vesperia Definitive Edition is absolutely one of my favorite games ever made. Just one of my favorite games ever made, and if you haven't played it, it's so good. It's so worth playing. I wish more people would pick this one up to get introduced to the Tales series because I think they'd love it just the same way I do.
I originally played Tales of Vesperia on the Xbox 360, and I thought it was a stunning game. And it really showed that RPGs could thrive on the Xbox 360. They just didn't find a foothold. But I'm so happy that it released on the Switch because this is a brilliant remaster and an absolutely stunning game that is so much fun to play. If you haven't played the Tales series, you owe it to yourself to do so. There you have it, everybody. My list of 10 must-own RPGs on the Nintendo Switch. Your list is going to be different than mine. This is just my opinion. I would love to hear from you in the comments down below. What are your 10 must-own RPGs? Till next time, folks, I've been Jay. Appreciate you spending a little bit of time with me. If you enjoyed today's video, consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. Like it. It helps the algorithm out. And hey, if you really dig the work I do here, check out the Patreon linked in the description down below. Until next time, remember to play more games, stay square, and take care. I'll talk to you soon.